Alright, so it's the 3rd of May 2015, and I'm here in North Scarborough in a neighborhood where I lived briefly when I was in university, and I'm going to show you what my commute to work was like back in those days. So this is the plaza that was closest to the house where I was living, and this is a predominantly Chinese area, so a lot of the stores have Chinese writing on the outside of them. Over on the left there, that business with the blue sign is the big grocery store. It's called the Foodie Mart.
So it's specifically an Asian grocery store.
They sell all kinds of different things that you wouldn't see at a typical grocery store. You know, vegetables that you've never even heard of before.
And I actually had a pretty interesting experience earlier today inside the Foodie Mart before I started filming this video. I went inside and I was standing in the fruit and vegetables area and I was just looking at some food, and I looked up from what I was doing and I looked 360 degrees around me at all the big crowd of people that was around me, and I didn't see a single person that was around me who wasn't Asian. So it really made me feel like I was in a very far away land.
I never really shopped there an awful lot. I found that, you know, they had a lot of stuff you wouldn't see at a normal grocery store, but I also found that the regular things that I was used to getting at grocery stores, they didn't have a great selection of, and the ones that they did were usually more expensive than a traditional grocery store. So I ended up riding my bike further outside of this area to get my groceries. So we're just going to ride from that plaza to where the house was that I lived. I stayed in this was back in the fall of 2011, and I actually made an apartment tour video while I was living there, so I'll link that video below. So I was living in the basement of a house. I had the whole basement to myself, and it was a pretty nice place to live. I enjoyed it. I think it was actually bigger than the apartment where I'm living in now. So basically the way that this community works, this neighborhood, is that busy road that we crossed back there, that's Warden Avenue. And partway along Warden, there's this big loop, which is the road that I'm riding on right now, which is called Bamburgh Circle. And in the middle of the circle is where the plaza is with all those stores, and there's also a bunch of big apartment or condominium towers in the middle. But then around that there's little streets that have regular single-family houses on it. So this is the street that I lived on, Sharrow Bay Court. And I lived almost right at the end of the street. It's fairly windy and my microphone is almost blowing away from my earpiece. Alright, so the third last one there, the one with the motorcycle parked in it, is the one that I used to live at. I guess it's number 5 with the purple garage, and the landlord was nice enough to let me keep my bike in there in the garage. So this is how I would get to work. I would ride along here. Unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to retrace my actual commute because, as you can see from all the orange fencing, the pathway is closed. They're doing it's a pipeline that runs below here. Up in the air, you can see there's power lines. So it's a hydro corridor, but there's also some kind of a gas or oil pipeline which runs below ground, and they're doing some replacements of that. But on a typical day, my commute would start from that garage that we just saw, and I'd get on this path, and I'd follow this pathway for probably about almost a kilometer in the north direction. But since that's closed, I'm gonna turn around and go this way instead. This is also the area where I was living, where I started to get really interested in flying kites. That's where I built my giant delta-shaped kite, and I flew it not too far from there. If we were to turn left of that hydro corridor instead of north, instead of right, then we would have gone to this big schoolyard area where there's a big grassy area that I could fly my kite. That's also the house where I was living when I bought my bike trailer, and that same schoolyard is where I made my video where I rode it around and tested it out and showed how it worked. So we're back on Bamburgh Circle now. And the interesting thing is, so this is Scarborough, which is a part of Toronto. It's one of the boroughs. It hasn't always been part of the city of Toronto, but it was amalgamated. Not exactly sure when. I think around the beginning of the 2000s. So, I believe I turn, no, not left there. Keep going straight. As you can see, I'm not so familiar with this route here because I very seldomly actually came this way. So as I was saying, so Scarborough is part of Toronto, but I actually very rarely get out this way. It's probably almost 15 kilometers from home. And so I haven't been to this neighborhood at all since I moved away in December of 2011. So this is where I would have come out on my route. This is the other end of that hydro corridor. And then I would have rode right onto the road here. And my workplace at the time was actually in Markham, which is the city which is just north of Scarborough. And that road straight ahead, where you can see lots of traffic on it, where the traffic lights are, that's Steeles Avenue, which is, what's going on here? Alright, there we go. Anyways, that Steeles Avenue is the border between Toronto, or Scarborough, and Markham. So right now we're still in Scarborough, but to get to work I had to cross that road, and then I was just barely on the other side, which was technically a different city in Markham. So from here I would get off this road and take this little sidewalk which led to one of the intersections of Steeles. And then I'd wait my turn to get across. I'd have to go across both ways, so I just take whichever one came first. Now I'm walking across these intersections because I realize that it's much safer to walk across than ride across. But back in 2011, I'm sure I would have been riding. So you can see there's a lot of big buildings around here. not necessarily tall buildings, but very large, spread out ones. That building over there is for IBM, which has their Canada headquarters here. And there's also another one over straight ahead that also is part of IBM. And I think a whole lot of these buildings around here were for IBM, but I think a few of them have been taken over by other corporations because I believe their company's gotten smaller in this area. All right, here we go. So, now we're crossing into Markham. And my typical commute actually took me through the big IBM parking lot. Which was always neat. Through here. Now, of course, traffic patterns and everything are much different because we're riding on a Sunday as opposed to a weekday in the morning. But it's a neat building with these tunnels which lead out to the parking lot. And all this parking in the front here is really just for visitors and maybe for the people that were the very highest up in the company. A nice, well landscaped road here. And from here I turned left to get out of this parking lot. And this road over here is called Victoria Park Avenue. Which in this area is not too busy of a road. It's only one lane in each direction. And I should point out that my commute to work when I lived here was very short. I think it was less than 5 kilometers, maybe 4.5, maybe only 4, depending on which route I took. So compared to my commuting videos that I do now at home, this is going to be much shorter. This road here is called Steeles Road East, and we're going to turn left onto it. And this road actually has bike lanes on it. And believe it or not, I think this is the only commute I've ever had over the years which included sections of bike lanes. It's not a very long section of bike lanes, but it's still something. So we're just coming up to Woodbine Avenue, and there's a neat thing here over on the left. There's this buffet restaurant in this plaza called Frankie Tomatoes, and we went there quite often when I worked in this area. I'll just do a U-turn over here so you can see Frankie Tomato. So they got this big leaning tower of Pisa in front of the restaurant. Alright, I'm gonna U-turn back. Luckily there was no traffic, so I could do that. But yeah, we used to go there a lot for, maybe once a week or so when I worked in this area. and it was a really good deal. You know, it was an all-you-could-eat buffet, and I forget what the cost was, but I think it was less than $10. So the building where I worked, it's at one of those ones over there that you can see. It's kind of pinky color, the way that the sun's reflecting off it right now. So depending on if I was really late for work or not, I might go across here and ride the sidewalk directly to get there. But if I had more time and I wasn't in any kind of a hurry, then I just go straight across here, continue on this Steeles road, and then make a turn and kind of take the back routes to get back there. It was certainly a nicer way to get back. Riding here, I definitely can feel that we're in a different city just because the little simple things like the street signs, they're colored in with a green background and white lettering. Or in Toronto, most places it's always a blue background and white lettering. And I guess the font's probably a little different too. They're just little things like that you notice when you go over the border between one city and another. But other than that, I mean, the city pretty much continues the same way that it was on the other side when you cross over Steeles. For the most part, I enjoyed living and working in this area. Although I certainly did find that it was not a very bike-friendly place. For example, there'd be those nice trails that I'd ride on, like the one that went underneath the power lines. But then at the ends of them, where it connected up with the actual street, there'd be no cut in the curb, so you'd have to, have to go bump down from that higher elevation down to the road level. So you could tell that they really didn't didn't think things through as to what it would be like for a cyclist to go and get around in the city. And then a lot of the busier, bigger, major roads had cars that moved very, very fast, and the lanes were usually not really wide enough to accommodate both a bike and a car. Another thing that I didn't like about living here is that one of my favorite stores, Canadian Tire, there wasn't any in the neighborhood at all. The closest ones, I think that neighborhood is or Canadian Tire had built stuff in basically everywhere except there, surrounding there. So there is probably 3 of them which were about a 10-kilometer bike ride to get to, but none of them that were any closer than that. So you could pick any direction and ride, and you'd eventually get to a Canadian Tire. Alright, so we're almost in the parking lot where I used to work. This definitely is the slower way of getting to work. If we just rode on that sidewalk, we would have been there long ago. 7100, I guess, is the address of the building. And I used to ride back this way, and I had a nice little parking spot for my bike underneath this parking canopy thing, 2-layer parking structure. So I ride under here. And it was just right in this little section in here that I parked my bike, segregated from the cars, and all I did was I had a piece of chain that I looped around this big pillar here, and I locked it there. I just left the chain there, and then I would lock my lock to that chain, and my bike would be, you know, well protected from the elements under here. It wouldn't get rained on or snowed on or anything like that, and it was, you know, well sheltered, as well as being kind of out of sight, and you know, not a lot of people would be tempted to steal it here. So from here, after I locked up my bike, I would walk over this way towards the office building. And this office did not have a shower for me to take a shower before work, but that wasn't a big deal. I just, you know, brought a towel with me or something like that I could just, you know, wipe off the little bit of sweat that came onto me when I was doing my short commute. And then I would just enter through this door over here, and there was a washroom right near that entrance, and I would change into my clothing and be ready to start work for the day. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed joining me on this retro commute to work. Please leave a comment and let me know what you thought, and thanks for watching.